It's 9:02. I want to just say welcome to everybody who is online this morning, and I would ask that you mute your mics at this point unless you're speaking. Let me just first say I'm Kathy Brandt, University of Minnesota Extension Educator in food safety, and I'm going to facilitate today. Suzanne Dreesen, also U of M Extension Food Safety Educator, is my co-facilitator and is going to be handling the chat box and any of those sorts of things that we have going on. And I would just say that you know, if you have questions, drop them into the chat box, and we do have a question and answer time that we're going to really focus on your questions. So as we're moving through our topics and so on, if you do have questions, drop those into the chat box. I want to turn this over to Shelley.
Good morning, everybody. We want to welcome you for joining us. I am Shelley Erickson, president of the Minnesota Cottage Food Producers Association. And we thought it would be good to get together to discuss this before the June 29th deadline. We will be doing another one after the 4th of July with a little bit more details, hopefully. But for now, it's just to help with any questions that people might have, because some of this stuff is a little bit confusing. And we really appreciate the folks from the Department of Agriculture and the University of Minnesota Extension who work so hard to help us with all this stuff. And it's all yours, Kathy.
All right, Shelley, thank you very much. I just wanted to kind of give a framework for our time. Really, why are we here? If you've looked at the COVID-19 Preparedness Plan template, you're maybe feeling a bit overwhelmed. And that's understandable. I know when I looked at it for the first time too, I thought, oh my goodness, this is a lot. What I want everybody to do at this point is just take a deep breath, all of us together. Exhale. And I'm going to say, it's going to be okay. Based on the resources that we have online today, our great counterparts at MDA, and we have resources, and we have some very creative cottage food producers. I think you're going to feel better after when 10 o'clock rolls around. You're going to be able to say, it's going to be okay. All right. So we have Carrie Rigdon and Alita Sorensen from MDA with us, and they're going to just do a bit of an overview and some key points from their perspective as far as the type of plan, preparedness plan that you need. We're going to have a Q&A time, and as I said at the beginning, you know, as we're going through, if you do have questions, put those into the chat box, and then we will get to those during that Q&A time. And we're going to do a little sharing from a cottage food producer's perspective as far as actually developing that plan and what they would recommend. And then we did have a list of resources. We're going to wait to share that with you via our different outlets at a little later date. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Carrie and Alita from the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, our regulatory folks who work with cottage food producers. Carrie and Alita,
yeah.
welcome.
Great. Just mic check. Can you guys hear me okay? Excellent. And I apologize. I tried the video. It wasn't working. So like with a lot of things, we're just going to roll with it, right? So I want to, so first, just introductions. Carrie Rigdon. I am Interim Assistant Director of Food and Feed Safety Division at Minnesota Department of Agriculture. And first, I want to give a big thank you to Minnesota Cottage Food Producers Association and U of M Extension for setting this up. This is really great, perfect timing. And then also a couple of acknowledgements. So just to tee off of what Kathy was saying, first I wanted to say that I've met a lot of you cottage food producers. You're full of ingenuity, determination, resolve. You've got all the resources to successfully implement one of these preparedness plans. And I'm sure many of you are already doing a lot to prevent coronavirus spread. I also want to acknowledge many of you are one-person operations. You're pressed for time, resources, and like Kathy said, many of you might be feeling stressed about how to complete one of these plans. And I just want to, acknowledge that, but also say what we're going to be focusing on today are really just focus on the risks and the key parts of a successful plan, and doesn't need to be complicated. And really, again, keying off of what Kathy said, I want you all to leave this meeting feeling like you're set up for success. So that's my goal. And you'll see, I just have I won't be talking for very long, just a few highlights because I want to spend most of the time answering any questions. So first, just some basics. So under Executive Order 2074, all critical sector businesses are required to have a COVID-19 preparedness plan. Food producers are a critical sector business. And I want to take this opportunity to say thank you all for what you've been doing in these unprecedented times, and thank you for your work in being a critical sector business. Very important work. I also want to just set the tone by saying Department of Agriculture's focus is on helping businesses protect themselves, your family members, workers if you have them, and your customers during a pandemic. I mean, that's the focus, right? And the plan can just build off of that. The best way to ensure health and safety is to have critical business owners examine your operations, what are you doing, and take necessary steps and precautions to reduce the spread of COVID-19. We talked about some resources, some templates of COVID-19 preparedness plan. And what I will say is that you're not required to use the template, and as long as the components that pertain to your operations are in the plan. Again, cottage food producers, you guys have a very unique business model, so not all of those components are going to apply to you. So the heart of what I want to say is, again, reassurance is that you all have been assessing your operations with a food safety lens, and this is a very similar approach. So similar to best practices in food safety, best practices during the pandemic are to focus on what the risks are. So first, what do we know about coronavirus and how it spread? It spread through those aerosols, those tiny droplets, many we can't even see, that are produced when someone coughs or sneezes or even talks, right? So this is one of those airborne spread diseases. So keep that in mind when you're working through your plan as to what can I do to make sure that I am reducing the chance of spread. And it really is, again, like we said, we want to keep this simple. So ask yourselves these questions. What are you doing to make sure, first, you and others that might be producing, packaging, and delivering cottage food products are not working while sick, right? So that's the first and the primary and the most important part. And that gets to, on the plans, you'll see the first part is identifying what are the protocols for identifying, it's called sick workers and excluding them from work. But what I really want to emphasize, and these are conversations that Alita and I have been having with food companies large and small, right? So it's the same questions, you know, and really emphasize when you are thinking about starting your production, I really encourage you to do some self-screening. And there's some really good resource, a very short checklist on the MDH website to ask yourself, you know, any new aches or pains? Are you just not feeling well? New fever, new cough, other things like that. And just encourage you guys to keep that checklist kind of posted as a reminder. And also, if you do have family members or others who are working in your operation, to screen them as well. And just very important to not work while sick. And one of the things that I have learned in my work very closely with Department of Health, and one of the occupational health nurses says that, you know, this is something that we want to be conscious of because what we know now about coronavirus, about COVID-19, is that you can be spreading, you know, kind of shedding the virus, you can be infectious and not really feel what we would think like we're sick. We might, you know, wake up and feel a little tired, under the weather, but we're gonna persevere and do our job because that's what we do, right? So what I want to emphasize is just, you know, take a pause and say, you know, and not just automatically say, I've got to push through this, but really take a pause and look at those screening questions and say, you know, am I really not feeling well? Should I not be working? So that's the first thing. The second thing, and I've got 4 things on my list. I know you can't see that, but again, we want to keep this very top level. The second thing is, what are you doing to make sure you're protecting yourself and your customers, particularly during deliveries? And that is the item on the preparedness plan where it talks about drop-off, pickup, and delivery protections, and also talks about that distancing and face coverings. So that's the second important part is how can you modify your operations so that, again, you're protecting yourself and your customers during those interactions and deliveries. The third of the 4 things on my list is what are you doing to make sure that your hands, surfaces, utensils, packaging, and other surfaces are kept clean and sanitized. And that gets to another 2 points on the preparedness plan. One is worker hygiene, and the other is workplace cleaning and disinfection. And then lastly, what are you doing to make sure you're communicating to your customers the steps you're taking, excuse me, to prevent COVID-19? And on that, on the plan, that falls under the communication and training practices. Now, part of that, a lot of that, you might think, oh, that doesn't apply to me because I'm a one-person operation. I don't have, you know, I have to train workers. But remember, the executive order also requires that plans are made available not only to workers, but to customers. So again, I said at the beginning, you guys are a very ingenious group. You have really great communication that you've already set up with your customers. So think of ways that you can let your customers know that, hey, I have a plan and here's how you can get access to it. So, so those are my 4 things. I know that we had said in the tentative agenda that we were going to do a screen share, but Kathy, is that something that we're not doing screen shares at this session right now?
Yeah, that's what we decided. We just were experiencing some technical issues. So Carrie, were you planning to do a screen share?
So the things that I have listed are, and probably the resources that you guys have already have on your list. One are where you can find the plan templates on the Department of Labor and Industry website. The second is I wanted to show you the MDA website where we have some guidance. Now that guidance is our food processors and manufacturers. That again, there's probably going to be a lot of elements in there that aren't directly applicable to your operation, but you still might get some ideas as you look through there. And then lastly, just reemphasizing that main Minnesota COVID-19 page, min.gov/COVID-19, a lot of great resources there. So those were going to be the three things that I highlight. So again, I said I wanted to keep this short and sweet because we wanted to get to questions. I'll just see if, Alita, if you're on, if there's anything you want to add before we send things back over to Kathy and open for Q&A.
No, that was great. And I mean, we walk through those similar steps when we work with large food manufacturers too. So it's something that can be scaled large or small. So just remembering kind of those key points. I think, yeah, you hit on all of them, Carrie. So thank you for taking the lead on that.
Great, thanks.
Thank you to both of you for sharing that. And just to reiterate what I heard from Carrie, just reassurance that you have been doing many of the practices, all of the practices that are required in that plan. And so, you know, to think about specifically the food safety best practices that you already have in place and how they can then fit right into that plan that you can develop for your own business. So very, very good points. At this time, let's move to questions. And I'll turn to Suzanne, who is handling that chat box. If we have had any questions that have come in, or certainly if you just want to unmute yourself and ask questions, please do that also.
Thank you, Kathy. And I've been in conversation with Mark earlier, but he was asking about food sampling, if that's allowed now. I know earlier it wasn't. So I don't know, Carrie or Alita, if you want to speak to that.
So food sampling, I'm going to have to check and get back to you. I know that there had been some new guidance that had just come out, and I need to double check if that addresses food sampling. But in the meantime, I also want to let you guys know that Department of Agriculture, and pardon my hesitation while I navigate over to our main page, because we do have we are going to have a session, a webinar, I believe it's next Tuesday. I apologize, I'm navigating over to our events. Next Tuesday, it's specifically going to be focusing on serving food and other on-site consumption. I believe that looks like it might apply to more farm operations, but I'll clarify that and get an answer back to you guys shortly.
And I'll just add to that, and Shelley put a comment in the chat box as well about the Minnesota Farmers Market Safe Sample Plan. I read through that yesterday. So there is there is some new guidance out there on sampling, and it just involves kind of a little bit more physical distancing and things like that, but it does exist. So if you're doing sampling at a farmer's market, which I'm assuming is the case, that can be applied in that situation.
Yes, and one of the things that it does need to be pre-portioned, so and follow all of the guidance regarding physical distancing as well. So
I'll put it on our Facebook page when we're done with this. Basically, it's everything that we did before, but with a few more precautions.
And it looks like Ken just cut and pasted the section into the chat box.
excellent, thank you. Let's see, I don't see anything else specifically, Kathy. So if we want to just move on, and I think we'll just keep looking to see if any other questions come up.
All right, thanks, Suzanne. That sounds great. Yeah, and if you think of something, either add it in the chat box, or we'll take some time a little later, just to open up the mic for questions also. One of the things that we thought might be helpful is just to hear from a cottage food producer or two who have actually been working on a plan. And so at this time, I'd like to welcome and introduce Jennifer Caribou. And Jennifer is a cottage food producer, and she's been working on a plan for her business. So Jennifer, welcome.
Hi there.
Hello.
Hello. So I've been working on this plan, put a few hours into it. A lot of it is just taken from CDC guidelines, FDA, MDH, so on and so forth. But a lot of it is already stuff that we as cottage food producers are doing, or at least I am here in my business, and I'm sure other people are as well. Does everybody have a copy of it or no? No? Okay.
The template of the template.
And I also did the template. I don't know. Anyways, so what I did is
Jennifer, excuse me. Allison's asking, are you referring to the template?
Are you asking if we have a copy of the template?
Oh, I'm referring to my plan, and I used I was using the template that was provided, but I've actually started editing the template that was provided for us so that it pertains more to cottage food producers, because most cottage food producers do not have employees. They're sole proprietorships working in their homes. So there are things that pertain and there are things that just don't pertain. And I think if we provide that template to them only, that they're gonna be even more overwhelmed. Does that make sense? So I've edited, and then I've actually condensed some of it into my plan because I can cover it differently, but still cover the same topics with less words. Does that make sense? Or less paragraph or sub-bullet, subtitles. So
Jennifer, that sounds really helpful. Where do we find it? Where do we find your template, or where do we find your plan?
Suzanne or Kathy, do you have it? Do you want to just send it out to the people who are on the meeting here, or should we just wait? Because it's still a work in progress. We're not ready to necessarily publish it yet, I don't think. And it's actually stuff that I believe you, Kathy, were working on already, and whomever else you were working with. I just started editing it for input.
Right, Allison, I appreciate your question, and I know that's probably what you're all wanting to get your hands on. Yes, to what Jennifer said, Jennifer has really done a nice job with streamlining this specifically for cottage food producers. So we will make a template available in the very near future. Okay, it's not ready to go. There's a small work group that's working on that, and it will be posted via all of the different networks, Cottage Food Producers Facebook page, and the association page, and also through extensions. So
Kathy, you're talking about a template that will have already been customized for cottage food producers, as opposed to the one that you put the link to this morning. Is that what you're talking about?
that is correct, Allison. Absolutely. It will be tailored for you, the cottage food producer. We will eliminate the things that you do not need to focus on and have included in that plan. I think Carrie at one point said, you know, that specific template is not required, but it's a great starting place. And based on what Jennifer has done, and we're going to do some tweaks, you will have a very workable template for your business. Okay?
Thank you.
Yes.
So have you seen the first template, Allison?
Yeah, I've got it screened up now. It's
Okay.
hideous looking.
So what I've done on my plan is I actually, you know, I have the title of my business and what it is and my industry, which is cottage food producing. I have a note immediately that says I do not employ anybody, so I do not, I'm not required to have an employee portion of it. Then you have the generic information about why it's being done. And then I move on to assessing individuals for COVID symptoms, illnesses, and exposure, along with questions to be asked. I have MDH assessment tool reference as a hyperlink. And then I also have the Mayo Clinic assessment tool reference as a hyperlink, which is really neat because it's an online self-assessment for the United States. It goes through, you ask questions, and based on your responses, you get an answer as to whether or not you potentially, if you should go in immediately, if it's 12 hours, you have no risk, so on and so forth. And you can actually print it off and keep it for records too, if you to, depending on how, oh, there, that's the template. You got it, Shelly, look at you. Is that the original one or is that the edited one?
It's the original.
Okay. Anyway, so on that one's kind of neat. So then I go on and I put social distancing protocol practice in, and then I do cottage food facility, which includes hygiene, cleaning, sanitation, and ventilation, instead of having a separate one for each. I have pickup and delivery practices and protocols, and then a communication protocol, signatures, and then I have an appendix with all the resources that are out there and available for everybody. And that was something somebody else put together. I just copy and pasted that. So anything that I specifically used or thought would be helpful, I added into my plan for easy reference instead of having to go back and reference it. It does take time. Don't think you're going to finish it in a half an hour or something like that, depending on what it is. But you're going to have to invest some time in it. It's your business and it's for safety, and do it. You know, it'll take a little while. So don't sit down on the 11th hour and think you're going to get done in 15 minutes. That would be my recommendation to everybody. And then I think as cottage food producers, when we should make ourselves available, the ones of us who have plans and have done it, so that anybody who is overwhelmed, we can help. And then we also have to remember there are going to be people out there that are cottage food producers that don't have access to technology and that type of thing. So we need to maybe consider how we're going to get this information to them. I know they're fully aware of the COVID-19 crisis, but to assist them in any way that we can would be helpful.
I have a question. Does the extension actually keep a record of who is producing what and in what kind of construct? So if you're a one-person operation and you're producing meat rubs, or
Oh, there's my plan. Sorry. What was your question again?
It was about, does the extension have a list of, or a categorization of, which of the home food producers are producing what kind of food and what kind of format? Because obviously different plans are going to apply, right?
Allison, I think that was you that asked the question. No, we do not keep a list of, you know, actually who is producing what? We say in our classes and online classes, we ask for the types of products that a person is making, but that's not categorized by the actual who thing, what food. You know, and I would ask Carrie and Alita here from MDA's perspective, as far as when a cottage food producer registers, do you want to just talk to that? I don't believe that you keep a list, but I would defer to Carrie and Alita.
Yeah, thanks, Kathy. So, Department of Agriculture currently does not keep a list of the types of products that registered cottage food producers are making. I do want to flip around the question a little bit because I would say I would encourage everybody to kind of pull back, not get too into the nitty-gritty of all of the steps of what you're doing, but just pull back with a lens to say, again, you know, how am I making sure that I'm keeping good worker hygiene? How am I keeping things clean and disinfected? And yes, that's going to be different for different operations, but I don't know that you really need to do a step, you know, look at your recipe and create a plan on that recipe. I just encourage everybody to pull back and take a longer lens when you are drafting this plan. I think that's going to save everybody a lot of headache. If that makes sense.
Thank you, Carrie. Allison, does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you.
All right, great. Let's jump back to Jennifer. Thank you, Shelley, for putting Jennifer's plan up on the screen. And Jennifer, if you have any additional comments, now that we see the plan.
Yeah, I don't know if anybody can see it and read through it. If they have any comments or critiques, that would be very welcome. But I did try to do it very high levels because as long as you're doing high level practices, it should make the more micro plan of every day, it should make it equally safe. You know, it'll all be safe as long as you are implementing all these practices with whatever you do in your production. That makes sense? So if anybody has anything they want to add, and I still have to include something about the exchange of money in here, but it's, again, very simple. If it's not electronic, then it's exact change or check. I put it into an envelope, and then I actually put it in a place and then away from food and that type of thing, and practice good hand washing and that type of thing. But I think I have pretty much everything else in here that I would need. I just need to go through and proofread it and see if I need to add anything additionally.
How long is it, Jennifer? We can see like 4 pages.
I think with it's 7 pages long with the resources that were made available. But actually 5 pages, so it'll probably get into 6 pages by the time I add a little bit more to it.
You want me to go up, down?
Yeah, I'm going to add the flyer link to my my pickup and delivery that was created by, I don't know if it was U of M or MDH or MFMA, about delivery early on during all of this. Communication protocol, you know, I left it very simple. I mean, I tried to keep it as simple as possible, but adding all the information in there that's necessary.
I have no idea what you guys are seeing on your end.
We're seeing about 6 pages now. The first 3, we're seeing all of it, and the second 3, we're seeing the top quarter. This is really helpful, Jennifer. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. a lot of the information is out there that to put in there already. MDH has done a great job of providing links. FDA, I would highly lean on questions from both MDH and Mayo. And if you're wondering how you're going to assess yourself or anything, you know, direct everybody to that Mayo Clinic self-assessment tool. That's really a good thing because it's in black and white, what you're looking for. And wash your hands. Yeah, but no. If anybody has any questions, comments, or things I should add in here, please let me know. But again, like I said, it took a while to put it together. So we need to make sure that cottage food producers know it's nothing that's going to take, it's not going to take a day to do it, but you're going to have to put a couple of hours into it and think about it and write it out.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I think what you've done looks just right on. You're including those practices that this of course is specific to your cottage food business, but I think this will be a very good guide. I would just ask, are there any other producers who are online who have spent some time putting together their business plan, their own business plan? I know Shelley is in process of working on her preparedness plan, and not hearing from anybody else that you know, this is something new again, and there is a small work group that will work with Jennifer. Suzanne and I were planning to do that. We will loop Carrie and Alita in as far as review and comments of what's pulled together. But if any of you who are online would be interested in participating in that work group, you can just add your name in the chat box and we will loop you in on that process. We're going to be doing this very quickly and really get something together in a short amount of time for your reference. All right, Suzanne?
Kathy, I do have, sorry.
Yes.
I do have one question for the MDA real quick. You know, my concern about the rural people or people who even in metropolitan areas that do not have access to technology, because we have so many cottage food producers now, what is the plan for communicating this to them to make sure that they fully understand what is expected of them?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I think and actually I've been thinking about that during the course of this webinar. And I think we can talk about it during the working group, but one of my thoughts is that I would like to take the plan and figure out a way to highlight, can we get this mailed out to people? And because we know we've got some cottage food producers that do not have access to computers, do not have access to phones, and so I would look to you guys for some ideas on that. But yeah, let's put our heads together and brainstorm on how we can make sure to get the plan out to everybody and covered. So yeah, that's a great question, and I've been thinking about that too. So I'm definitely open to ideas, and we do have the ability to send out things through the mail, which has been the method to reach a lot of those folks. So yeah, let's work in the SWAL work group, make that one of our action items, And if there's ideas, please send them our way.
That would be great. I think it would be great to partner as an association, an extension, and MDA together in order to provide communication to everybody, because that's something we struggle with on a daily basis, is providing information to those people, and so that we make sure that we're trying to do our part to educate cottage food producers, because we just want to make sure that we're a strong group that has the safety and best interest of all Minnesotans at hand. Does that make sense? So I think that's an excellent idea. Thank you.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, let's continue that and just make that an action item of this partnership, definitely.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Any other questions for Jennifer or for anybody? You can either add those questions in the chat box or unmute and go ahead and ask. And Suzanne, I would just ask if any other questions have popped up in the chat box.
Sure, thanks, Kathy. It doesn't look like we have any further questions coming in right now. I'll keep watching.
I have one request, and I have a hard time looking at all these microphones and pushing the right buttons. Sorry. Shelly, can you share my email with, I don't know if there are some cottage food producers on here and whatnot, so if they read this over, since they've seen it on the screen, or if they have access to it, they can shoot me suggestions or ideas if they don't want to join the group, so that I can share it with the group that we're working with.
Your plan?
Yeah, just my plan and email address. Does that make sense? Or if I guess I can just email it to the participants too.
You can put your email in the chat.
Okay, here we go. On the chat. Sorry.
All right, that's a wonderful suggestion. So Jennifer, if you just add your email address into that chat box, then anybody who would like to connect with you directly about your plan and how you you know, work through it, they will have direct access to you. That sounds great. The other thing I would reiterate, if any of you are interested in being involved with the work group, add your name into the chat, probably name and email address, so that we can connect with you in the very near future. All right. As I mentioned at the beginning, we do have a variety of resources, and once the template is ready, those resources will be included with that information, and we will distribute that via our various avenues. And you know, I think the whole issue that Jennifer raised, as far as folks who don't have access to a computer, internet, and so on, then that work group will brainstorm and figure out how we are going to get information out to all of our cottage food producers throughout Minnesota. All right, any other questions or clarifications, points that we should, the small work group should consider?
I have a question about where the plan should be accessed. So once we have it, should we attach it to any website or Facebook or social media presence that we have? Do we have to be that explicit with it, or do we just need to have it?
Alita or Carrie, I'm going to defer that to you.
Yeah, great.
It doesn't.
Go ahead.
It doesn't need to be posted anywhere. That's up to your discretion. Really, the point is to have it and to have thought through it. And if someone asks to see it, then you have it, but you don't have to have it posted anywhere. I don't know, Carrie, if you have anything to add.
Yeah, Great. Yeah, same thing. Just think through how you would communicate that to your customers if they have questions. So I would encourage you, if you, as part of your business approach, some of you may want to post it on your website, and that's perfectly fine, you know. But again, tailor it to your business, and just make sure that it's available to your customers. So think through how you would make that available, and yeah, tailor it to your business.
And I would add, and Jennifer, you alluded to this too, but it's really about having a plan and implementing it. And you had mentioned that a lot of the things that you put in your plan were things that you were already practicing to keep your family safe. So.
Yeah, you're exactly right. A lot of it is just stuff we're already practicing. And a lot of it's basics, going back to the basics. It's things that I owned a daycare for 10 years in North Dakota. And it was something I drove home with everybody, whether it was an employee, a parent, or a child. So a lot of this is second nature. But again, what we think is common sense isn't always common sense. Therefore, we need plans. And I also want to add, and I don't have to type that way, yay. I think when you were asking about adding it on social media or a presence, whatever you're practicing, I think is good to include in social media or anything that you may have, because it's going to create consumer confidence. I don't think posting of your entire plan is necessary, because people are not going to read it. But whatever you're doing to keep everybody safe, it's going to consumer confidence, show that you're serious about what you're doing, and that your intention is to keep everybody safe. And that way, you know, and if people see you practicing it, not only in your home, but when you're out and about, I mean, because we do have to get out and about, we go grocery shopping and different things like that. As long as you're practicing it when you're out and about too, it's gonna help your business. This is something to help your business, because I'm sorry, there are things my father-in-law, I was in North Dakota, and he wanted me to go to this restaurant with him, and North Dakota's wide open, and the first thing I saw were fingerprints all over. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I'm like a huge fingerprint window lady anyways. And I'm like, ew. So I like walk in, and I'm like hardly trying not to touch anything, you know, and I'm kind of looking at everything, and I look at the window, and it looks like some little kid's been licking the window. And I'm just like, really, Michael? No, we are leaving. And then we came back a couple of days later to North Dakota to do some stuff, and I wouldn't let him go anywhere. I'm like, I will make you food. You are not going anywhere. I don't trust where you go. So, and then we did go sit on a patio, because I had to give in a little bit, because, you know, he is my elder and whatnot, but it was just bleh. So it's all about consumer confidence, and we need to do what's best for cottage food producers in our industry to promote it. So I'm done.
I think that all you really would need to do on your social media is to make a declaration that you are practicing, you know, following the safe COVID-19 practices, and in general, that you're doing food safety.
I have
Yeah, that's really sorry.
Sorry, no, go ahead, Suzanne.
I was just, thank you, Shelley, for bringing in that food safety, because that is really, sometimes we think about, we focus our energy on other things, and it really is just part of your plan. There's maybe a couple other things that you have to now include, but it really should be part of your food safety plan. So thank you for mentioning that.
Excellent point. I had a message here from one of our participants. I'm about to launch my cottage food business. Took the class, got the certificate, and this person is asking, where is the best place to ask questions of other cottage food producers as you go along? So I'm going to defer to Shelley and maybe Jennifer. Where would you say are the best places to go about asking questions of other producers?
Well, the Minnesota Cottage Food Producers chat group. We have a chat group that's just for cottage food producers. and everybody on there is so helpful. We do make sure that it's registered cottage food producers, just so that it doesn't get too crazy. But if it's a newly registered person and they're still waiting for their registration, we'll make an exception. But that's the best place because everybody suggests everything. They help each other. It's a great group.
It is a great group. And then you can also go to our association website page, which has links to your blog, Shelley. You are excellent about adding information to that all the time. And then there's a great resource of archived links as well. And then if you go to the resource page on our Minnesota Cottage Food Producers Association webpage, there's a list of we've tried to include everybody. So there's a link, you can click on it and it'll take you to the U of M, MDA, I believe MDH, the Cottage Food Producers Page Association, where you can ask for membership, Forager, all different types of, there's a lot of links. So if you go to the resources and then wait for it to show you all of the links, you individually click on them and it'll pull you over to their website on a new page.
Shelley, is the chat group on Facebook?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Also, we should mention that Jennifer is the vice president of the Minnesota Cottage Food Producers Association. Forgot that. Sorry, Jennifer.
That's all right.
Kathy, I just put in the chat a link to the Minnesota Department of Agriculture and the Minnesota Occupational Safety and Health Administration, and colleagues in the farm safety, food safety are going to have a webinar tomorrow, June 26th from 3 to 4 on COVID preparedness plans. It'll focus more on farm businesses, but if you really want more information about that, you can join. It's a free webinar. I put the link there to register.
Great info. Thank you, Suzanne, for adding that.
And Mark Richardson will join our work group. So that's awesome. Thank you, Mark.
Great. Anything else? I'm looking at our at the clock, and our time is starting to wind down. If there are, some last minute questions, certainly ask those now. Otherwise, know that, we are all here, we're working together, and we want you to know that we are accessible to you, and we are here to support you in a very successful business.